Hi everyone. Something here I think needs to be read out. This was from The Guardian. It said Turkey threatens to end refugee deal in row over EU accession. President Erdogan issues warning after European Parliament vote urging ministers to freeze talks on Turkey joining the EU. Turkey's president has threatened to tear up landmark deal to stem the flow of refugees into Europe, a day after the European Parliament urged governments to freeze EU accession talks with Ankara. The threat underlines how far the relationship between Turkey and the European bloc have deteriorated in recent months, particularly after the coup attempt in July. You clamoured when 50,000 refugees came to Kapiku and started wondering what would happen if the border gates were opened, Erdogan said in a speech on Friday at a women's rights conference, referring to the Bulgarian border checkpoint where refugees massed last year. If you go any further, these border gates will be opened. Neither I nor my people will be affected by these empty threats, he said. Do not forget, the West needs Turkey. Erdogan's statement, the most direct warning yet that Turkey could abandon the agreement, came in a response to a symbolic non-binding vote in the European Parliament on Thursday that demanded an end to the decade-long accession negotiations. Turkish officials said the vote was meaningless, but that it raised questions about the entire partnership between the country of European bloc, Germany, France, most EU states, backed continued engagement. You know, we know what goes on here is governments playing games, and they use the refugees, not just Erdogan. They all are using refugees up through Europe and that, and the European governments are using the threat of refugees and the propaganda going about the refugees, and everything's blamed onto refugees, and it's their fault for everything going on in the world at the moment. And you have Trump doing the same, blaming refugees and foreign people for everything going on in the world. You have the rise of fascism going on in the world, and but it's fucking disgusting when you have governments threatening other governments, and they will use the refugees for this threat. These are suffering people. They're coming out of a war zone, most of them. There's women, children, men really suffering. And what's gone on in Europe in the last 18 months is so disgusting. It's unbelievable what the European governments have done, which I've said many times, with the Geneva Convention. In the last 18 months, they've destroyed everything. They've destroyed the Geneva Convention in Europe. They've destroyed humanitarian help in Europe. They're destroying everything they can. There is humanitarian help because there are these people with big hearts that are standing up and fighting. They're losing their families, they're losing their friends because of the propaganda in the press. It's not all the press, but it's this big thing when you see the headlines, of the newspapers. You had 300 people die off of Egypt the other week, and the front headlines is some celebrity, and there's nothing about the 300 people, women, children, small children drowning and everything else. It seems like the people of Europe, they're just closing their eyes. The majority of people just closing their eyes what's going on around the world, and a lot of it's to do with the bad publicity from the media and the propaganda coming out the media. In Britain, there are good media in Britain. I mean, The Guardian, for one, it prints a hell of a lot about the truth and what's going on. Channel 4 News, another one. They do a tremendous job, and they try to print the truth and everything. They don't print this shit that's going round. I mean, there's things like, there's one newspaper the other day, you had Joe Cox, shot to death, a great humanitarian in that, and the guy was actually, it came to a court and everything in the other day, and they sentenced him in that, and this one newspaper, it was page 30, they put a pit this big, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. And you have, you have governments going, not governments, you have leaders in governments. You have May going against the Parliament, over the Brexit deal and things like this, just trying to bypass the Parliament. I mean, the Parliament was put there for a reason, And when you have leaders think that, they can do anything they like, like Trump, for one, God help us in the next 4 years. Because what's going to go on is going to be unbelievable. He's going to really unstabilize America massively. And we have this over here with Erdogan. If he opens those gates, we're going to have to prepare ourselves for a massive influx of refugees. We'll do our best here on the north coast of Lesbos. And I know the Greek people will do their best. I mean, these Greek people have been amazing. Absolutely. We have the fascists and the horrible people, but it's very small. I've said this in my last video. They do a lot of damage to Greece, these awful, these bullies, these fascists, and basically they're just small people trying to make a name for themselves by throwing petrol bombs and ripping people's car tyres and things like this. They're nothing but wimps and cowards. But the majority, 99.9, maybe more than that, of Greeks have been absolutely tremendous. I don't think there's another country. Italy's done well, but I don't think there's another country in Europe that would do as well as Greece has regarding the humanitarian side of things. They've done absolutely amazing, incredible. I don't think there's anywhere else in Europe that would do it. And you see this hatred in Europe towards refugees, which is incredible. These governments in the last 18 months have has destroyed any respect Europe had for around the world. Because these governments have turned Europe into a horrible bloody place, and with the help of these media doing this, I mean, Europe was meant to be a civilized place. I thought it was 18 months ago. I thought, Europe is civilized. Over the years, the Kosovo wars, we've always helped the refugees out. We've always tried all over Europe to look after them until the conflict was over, and then they'd go back home. Except for the governments we got now. They're absolutely disgusting. Awful people, and there should be prosecutions on some of this stuff going out, and especially in the newspapers, and from politicians, and from officials, people like Farage and people like that. When they spew their filth, why isn't this guy prosecuted? And their lies, why wasn't he prosecuted for the lies he put into Brexit? Why aren't these people taken into court? Why ain't the newspapers demanding these people go to court? When they put out this filth and this stuff and this hate speech, why isn't it acted upon? It's unbelievable what goes on. There are hate units, crime units for the internet, and there's crime units for against fascism and racism and stuff like that, for fascists and for against racism. Sorry, these crime units should be dealing with it. And when newspapers put the filth out, 5 years ago, if some of the crap that's going in the newspapers now was put out then, all hell would have gone loose, But it seems like there's no bounds anymore. The newspapers can print what hate they like. They can say what they like. You have politicians coming out with this hate speech, and it's acceptable these days. We've lost all more morals. In the last 18 months, the deterioration in morals in Europe is absolutely fantastic. It's incredible the damage these few newspapers and this propaganda shit that's coming out against Muslims and against refugees, and this propaganda that's coming out of politicians' mouths and this shit that's coming out of politicians' mouths. They should be arrested. There should be prosecutions, and there are laws against it. This is the thing, there are laws against it, but no police force has taken it up. No governments are standing up, no MPs are standing up in Europe and saying this shouldn't be said, you shouldn't say things like this. This is a hate crime. This is propaganda, When you have people bypassing their parliaments and thinking they can do what they want, especially in Britain, May tried to bypass the parliament. Why hasn't she been arrested? Why didn't the newspapers and the media make more of it? Why is David Cameron allowed to get away with tax fraud and things like this when the little guy on the street would be prosecuted and put into prison? Why is there two laws, one for these new politicians that are coming in the last few years and one for the poor and the working class? Yeah, why aren't these politicians taken on? They're just human beings. You know, they wipe their arse the same as we do. What gives them this privilege? They can get away with not paying their taxes. Trump actually stood up and he thinks he's a clever man for not paying his taxes, and they voted him into power. I've never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life. What's all the Americans going to do next year? All of them are going to stop paying their taxes and say, well, Mr. Trump, our president, says he's an intelligent man for doing it, so if we're intelligent people, we shouldn't pay our taxes either. This is just crazy. The whole world's gone upside down. Yeah? And it's everywhere. You know, look what's happening now in Aleppo. You know, Putin, he's a mass murderer. Assad is a mass murderer. They're murdering people. They're bombing hospitals deliberately. They're using bloody chemical weapons. They're using chlorine bombs deliberately. And the world's just sitting there watching, no one saying nothing against it. If the people of Europe and the people of the world don't start standing up, the good people of the world, we're going to go into a third world war. Yeah? God help us. God help us in the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah? It's for the people to stop this and this, start looking and seeing what's going on in the world, start opening your ears and start acting against it. Get on the streets. Stop this filth and this shit that's going on. Stop this rise of fascism that's going on throughout the world. Stand up and do something. Yeah? Okay. It's enough of that. I mean, this is mostly here on the north coast. I don't know what's going to happen next time, but if the European governments don't get off their bloody arse, you know, the thing is in Europe now, don't have one European government, you know, you have two, because you have the European Commission and you have the European government. Who's running Europe, I don't know. It doesn't sound like the European Parliament's running Europe in the last 18 months. It sounds like these people from the European Commission are running Europe, you know, and that is not democracy as far as I'm concerned. That's dictatorship, you know. These people from the European Commission was appointed by heads of states to go in there. They weren't elected by the people. The people in the European Parliament was elected by the people. These people should be running Europe, not the European Commission. And these people, some of these people in the European Commission should be accountable for their actions in the last 18 months. Believe me, you should be really accountable. And it's for the people of Europe to stand up and make them accountable for what they've done. And make them accountable for the way they've degraded Europe and the people of Europe and the way the people had big hearts in Europe. Yeah? Okay. Right, there's the night before last, Thursday night in Moria camp, there was a lady cooking in a tent and the gas cylinder exploded. There was a child killed and the child's grandmother killed, burnt to death. And we have 5 people in intensive care that were flew off the island into Athens. It was an awful night. You know, when you have something like this happen in a camp like Moria, Moria is really overcrowded and everything else, and a lot of people are sleeping in these little three-man tents, you know, not even waterproof. When it rains hard, it goes straight through. And they're living, you know, 3 men in these things, and they're just tiny little tents. And when you get something like this, I spoke to one refugee, and he said, Mr. Eric, he said, I see dead bodies today, you know. You know, it's very hard. I mean, lucky enough, Attica, the warehouse we have down in the south, it's run by Arse, they took 150 people straight away, and he said, when I went down there, I was down there with Arse yesterday, and there's still refugees there in the tents and stuff, and he was feeding everyone. The UNHCR jumped in with a load of food for him as well. MSF came with loads of blankets and stuff, and he had there. You know, thank you very much for the Attica warehouse. You know, you've done a fantastic job. I was down there yesterday. It's incredible to see. And Harris is really one hell of a guy to do that. You know, we really have to prepare. I don't know what's going to go on if Erdogan does open the gates. I really hope we don't get the same shit from the EU Parliament and the EU Commission that we've had in the last 18 months. I hope they get their head together and deal with this in a proper human way. You know, they've been responsible for a lot of abuses and stuff out here. And I hope it changes if it comes again. And I think if it comes again, we might get a lot of Turkish people as well. So, we'll see. We're out here. There's a lot of people out here, and they're doing their best. We're still getting boats in. We had boats in last week. We're getting boats in. The last few days has been quiet, but okay. All the best, everyone. I'll keep you updated with things. All the best. Bye.